As children, threes were not valued for themselves, as very few of us were. Instead, they were valued for being and doing certain things extremely well. They learned to get validation of their worth through achievement and performance. Hello and welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, where each week we talk about ideas for raising kids who become thriving adults. I'm your host, Audrey Monkey. I'm a summer camp director, writer, and speaker, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents over the past 3 decades. My husband, Steve, and I are raising 5 kids who currently range in age from 15 to 25. So my interest in raising kind, optimistic, self-reliant kids who become thriving adults is personal as well as professional. Hi, Sunshine Parenting listeners. I am so excited to bring you today's interview. I had originally planned on making this a solo episode to talk about self-awareness, personality tests, and some different things that I wanted to share about the importance of knowing yourself and knowing your kids and understanding how your different personalities work together and sometimes cause little pitfalls in the relationship. But while I was thinking about what I wanted to say and share, I reached out to my daughter, Meredith, who was the one who told me about the Enneagram about a year ago. And it's something that we've been talking a lot about as a family. And so I got her on for an interview for this episode. So I hope you enjoy episode 104, Know Yourself, with my daughter, Meredith Monkey. Well, I'm excited to welcome this new guest to my podcast today. I've known her for quite some time. Today I have my daughter, Meredith. Welcome, Mer.
Hello, I'm happy to be here.
So just a little background on this. I was just sitting here and my whole plan today was I decided I wanted to record just a solo episode because I had this topic that I wanted to cover and I didn't have a guest that was an expert on it. And then I remembered that the reason I got into this topic was because of you.
That's right. I really talked your ear off about this right when I found out about it.
So instead of sitting by myself and recording, I decided to give you a call and see if you were available to be on the podcast today. So I'm really excited. Basically, the whole theme of this podcast is about the importance for parents and anyone who works with kids to know themselves, because we really, like, your own self-awareness has a huge impact on how you view the behavior of others.
That's very true. And I think also just knowing different personality types and being aware helps you to be more empathetic toward people who have different personality types than you.
Oh my gosh, completely. And you can have more compassion when you understand like where they come from that's different from you. Like all of a sudden it changes your view of why they do something that maybe annoys you or that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's really interesting. I was thinking about what I wanted to say on this topic. And then I went for a walk with my friend Vivian, as I was just telling you before we started recording. And we ended up talking a lot about how as parents, we are different with each of our kids because our kids each have different personalities. And it's really important, like as a parent, it's our responsibility to adjust. It's not our kids.
Right.
So I started telling her about the Enneagram and how you told me about it. So why don't you just start, where did you first learn about the Enneagram?
I first learned about the Enneagram when I was working at International Justice Mission. I had arrived, and about a week after I arrived, we had a division retreat, and the whole theme was the Enneagram. And so they were sending out all these emails telling us to take different online quizzes to find out which number we were. And so I was over at my desk taking like 5 different quizzes just to be sure. And I was getting different numbers every time. So I was kind of confused. But I went to this retreat and learned more about it. And then after that, it got me interested in the Enneagram, and I ended up reading The Road Back to You. But I kind of started at IJM, and everyone there talked about it a lot. So that's when I really started delving in and trying to find out more about it.
Well, and then you called us and got us all talking about it. So then our whole family, especially your dad and I, got really into like figuring out, wait, what are we? What number am I? What number are you? And all that.
Will say I sent a link to the family group text and only the girls responded, which I guess makes sense. And all the girls said they were the exact same number, which I didn't believe. So then I made everyone take it again.
What did we all say originally?
I think you all said that you were 2s, which I learned that being mistyped as a 2 is the most common number for Christian women because the description of a 2 matches what like a typical.
Right. What you're supposed to be doing, kind of.
Yeah. And then after I said that, I think one of the sisters said that they might have answered some things as like what they wish they were rather than what they think. Yeah. I don't know.
That's the problem with all of these personality tests. And it's so funny because it reminds me at camp, I don't know if you were there the summer that we did the animals where we asked people, like, there was like this chart. It was a really simple personality trait kind of thing. And it was like associating you with one animal. And there were, I'm not even going to remember them, but I just remember that dolphins were the like amiable, kind, whatever. And everybody, like so many people, like the majority of the people went to the dolphin group. And everyone always wants to be whatever that type or number is that's like, oh, the kind, whatever. Doesn't mean that you're not kind if you're not in it, but it's just interesting that you're right. People want to be like typed into the thing that sounds best to them.
Right. It's true. Yeah, but I do think with the Enneagram and with most personality quizzes, once you find out what you are, you kind of don't want to be with that, whatever that is. Mostly because at least I've had that reaction to most personality tests. I find out whatever I am and I'm like, well, that's the worst one to be because you know yourself and I don't know. I think it's easier to focus on like the downsides of that personality type and like look at the good sides of the other personality types too.
My favorite quote. Remember what it is?
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yep. See, you've learned it well. Well, I actually have had the opposite experience with the Enneagram. The more that I've read about my type, it's actually like freed me a lot from some of my frustrations with myself and sort of given me a better understanding about why I've done some of the things I've done and like why I am the way I am. And it actually makes me feel a little better. I like that whole idea that there are some things that just make me kind of unique. And just because I don't do something the same way or view things the same way, it's still okay. And I just think that self-awareness is like a really important part of social intelligence. And a lot of us don't have it. And I really don't think I did until a few years ago when I started like doing more like strengths testing and this Enneagram and, the 4 tendencies. It's like all this stuff kind of comes together to be this like puzzle of self-awareness. Like, oh, that's why I do something that way. So the main thing that I want to just talk about, I thought it'd be fun. And first of all, say your caveat about people not going around like giving people numbers.
Yeah, that was in the introduction of the book that we both read called The Road Back to You, about how after you find out the personality types, your natural reaction is to read the chapters and think, oh, I know who's that number, and go around and try to enlighten people on which numbers they are, because it's actually really just a tool for yourself and maybe for your close family members and close friends so that they can understand you better, but it's not something that you go around even asking people like, what's your Enneagram number? Because actually sharing your number is sharing how you think and your weaknesses and different lies that you believe about yourself. And it's actually quite personal.
Well, and I also think, it's an interesting one because it is one where you take these quizzes online and it gives you kind of like, you're likely one of these numbers, but you really have to read the book or read in depth to really understand for sure, like which one you are, because oftentimes, depending on how healthy you are and what you're doing, you look like a different number.
Right. That's true.
So I think that's the other why you really can't tell about someone else, because you don't know what's going on inside of them. So maybe they have some behaviors that you think indicate something, but it's just, anyway. So it's not the kind of thing that you go around like saying, well, I think you're a 6 or whatever it is. But what's really helpful is, I think, like, especially in The Road Back to You, is that the one that has the like in relationships part? Or is this Modern Enneagram? I have 3 books in front of me right now that are all Enneagram. So you started me with The Road Back to You, an Enneagram Journey to Self-Discovery. And then I read that, I think last December. And then I got the Modern Enneagram. Is this one? Have you read this one?
No, I think I saw it on our coffee table a few times. But
yes. Okay. And then
that one's more of like a graphic, just easy one, right?
Yeah. It has a lot of pictures and it talks about we're just on audio, so people won't see this, but this one's called The Modern Enneagram, Discover Who You Are and Who You Can Be. And I'm going to put links to all of these in the show notes so that people can find them. But this one has some good stuff about like strengthening connections, navigating family dynamics. So this one's actually pretty good too. So let's just talk quickly about each of the 9 types, like a general overview, and then we'll share about ours and just sort of like what we've learned about ourselves, because I think that's kind of fun and people will like to hear that. So type 1, ones fill the role of the family perfectionist, fulfilling parents' expectations to the letter or instilling values and standards in their children. Type 2, 2s fall into the role of family helper, pleasing their parents or diligently looking after their children's needs. Type 3, 3s fulfill the role of family star, embodying their parents' values and dreams or encouraging their kids to succeed. Type 4, 4s shed light on the family's problems, encouraging their loved ones to address difficult familial shadows. Type 5, 5s prefer to have some space from family dynamics and seek the role of family expert in areas of interest. Type 6, 6s move between building family unity and rebelling against the family unit. They're often rebellious children and protective parents. Type 7, 7s fill the role of family cheerleader, bringing smiles to family members and seeking to minimize pain. Type 8, 8s become family protectors, exerting power as children or parents and taking on responsibility for loved ones. Type 9, 9s act as family peacemakers, mediating conflicts between parents or children and refusing to take sides. So this was actually, these are not the descriptions like of the type. This is just within families, like family relationships.
Yeah, I haven't heard those ones before, but yeah.
Does it sound right?
Yeah, like family versions of
right.
what the numbers are.
But so let's just, do you have your book in front of you? Why don't you just talk about like the main titles of each of the types?
Well, it's kind of like what you just said, I think, but basically, type 1 is the perfectionist, type 2 is the helper, type 3 is the performer, type 4 is the romantic, type 5 is the investigator, type 6 is the loyalist, type 7 is the enthusiast, type 8 is the challenger, and type 9 is the peacemaker. So it's similar to what you said, it's just without the in relation to a family.
Right, like what role you might play in the family. Hey, Sunshine Parenting listeners, so glad you're here. I want to take a moment to tell you about my book, Happy Campers, 9 Summer Camp Secrets for Raising Kids Who Become Thriving Adults. I've been getting such great feedback and some really nice messages from people who are finding the book really helpful and finding some fun, easy to implement strategies for making their homes and families happier and more connected. If you're interested in delving into the topics more deeply than just reading the book and collaborating with others to discuss different ideas, I'd love to invite you to join my 2019-2020 read-along of Happy Campers. Our book club is online and you can access it whenever you have time. So there's no real commitment, but it will give you access to tons of resources, videos, and other things that you might find helpful in your parenting or your other work with children. To join the book club, simply visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com/happy. And you'll be able to sign up at the bottom of that page to join the book club and get access to the book hub resources and all the book club details, including our monthly Zoom calls, which will be open to all participants. Well, this book, this one that I'm looking at now, The Wisdom of the Enneagram, it's a really fat book and it has a big chapter on each type. And what I really liked, I've only read about my type so far. I'll read yours next in it, but because I've read all the other ones, but it talks about, this one's called personality type 3. That's me, by the way. The achiever is what it's called in here. And they talk about your basic fear, your basic desire, and the super ego message. And then I highlighted like this whole chapter because I was reading through going, oh my gosh, like light bulbs going off right and left because just so many things in here are like, yeah.
No, it's like highlight if you can relate to it and then you can relate to the whole chapter. So.
Yeah, there's less unhighlighted than highlighted or whatever. But so this is interesting, like for mine, which is the 3, it says for the childhood pattern, it says, as children, 3s were not valued for themselves, as very few of us were. Instead, they were valued for being and doing certain things extremely well. They learn to get validation of their worth through achievement and performance.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because the basic fear of the three is of being worthless, feeling or without value apart from their achievements. Basic desire is to feel worthwhile, accepted, and desirable. And the superego message is you are good or okay as long as you are successful and others think well of you, which is like sad. Like,
Well, that's what I was saying about like once you find out your type, you find like the really painful, sad parts about it. And then you're like, oh, this is intense.
yeah. And it's like things that kind of seem like good traits, like being really goal oriented or doing all these things. I just now I'm understanding a little bit more about like why I am the way I am. And it's helpful because obviously my biggest challenge is something that most people don't have, which is learning to just relax and be without having to achieve. So that's kind of the self-awareness that I've come to is that what I need to work most at is not working.
Right.
Which is so funny. So let's talk about yours.
That just reminds me, I just have to share your one word of the year story. I'm sure you've already shared on one of your podcasts before that every year our family, my mom, of course, leads our family in each picking a word to be our word of the year. And I think when we first started doing this, my mom, a few weeks into January, was still narrowing down her word because she needed to pick the perfect one. And I remember her texting me while I was in college saying, I think I found the one. I think it's just going to be do, D-O, like do things. And I just thought, that seems like the opposite of what you need to do, Mom, because you do everything. So I like the difference between do and your now goal of just be, because I think that reflects a little more of what would be helpful for your personality type.
I think that came from the Bob Goff book, Love Does. Really, to be honest, because it was like, you know how it's that whole thing of where you can sit around like thinking about things that you want to do versus going out and doing them. So there was like a good thought behind it. But yes, you're correct. I wasn't as self-aware. I hadn't had my Enneagram yet back then. So
you do go out and do things already.
I do. I don't really need that as a word. But guess what? Haven't my words been better? Now I've had like breathe and peace and focus. So I'm getting more in line with like what I should be doing for my words. Okay. So let's hear about your type.
I am a 1, which is the perfectionist, which was helpful for me to learn because I just learned that I'm different from other people in my family. I don't think anyone else is a perfectionist in our family. And it was also helpful because one of the big qualities of being a 1 is having a really loud inner critic all the time in your head that's just criticizing every little thing until it's perfect. And so I think being aware that that's not like, it's like normal and that's like something that other people experience too, because I think for a lot of my life, people would just tell me, don't be so hard on yourself, or like, why are you thinking that way? Or why are you being so hard on yourself? And I never knew why, but I think it's just because I just had these really high expectations for myself. But I think what was most helpful is finding that I can be a 1 and I can think this way, but there are healthy ways to live as a 1 that's not living in a constant state of self-criticism or criticism of others, that there's a way, that there's actually positives to being a 1 and not just the negative things. Because I think what we'll talk about also is how you can be in healthy and unhealthy states in each of the numbers. And so being 1 isn't greater than being another. But yeah, I think it was helpful just for me to realize and for me to share with my family too, because then they kind of could understand a little more about where I was coming from and why I have these ridiculous standards for myself sometimes.
Yeah. And you, like other people, you get disappointed in other people for not meeting those high standards too. Well, so this book has more than just like you have the name The Perfectionist, but in my book, type 1, they also say these other words: the teacher, the activist, the crusader, the moralist, the perfectionist, the organizer. So I like in this book, it kind of like expands to some of the different things. And it says for the type 1, the basic fear is of being bad, defective, evil, or corrupt. The basic desire is to be good, virtuous, in balance, to have integrity. And the superego message that you hear is you are good or okay if you do what is right. Does that sound right? They have all these quotes from people in here too. It's funny because I think mine is actually like the achiever thing has some perfectionist issues. I've always thought, I used to call myself that. Like that's what I named it.
Well, I think it's more, from what I see, I think it's a difference of an internal thing and an external thing, because they are both concerned about achievement and perfection and that kind of thing. But threes are more focused on success as it appears outwardly. And I think like number ones are more focused on themselves. Like for me, I am hard on myself, even if no one else knows what happened. I just have that standard kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I used to say about you, and there were other kids who are like this, that you are not a person that anyone should ever like tell you that you need to do anything better. Like it's the opposite. We had to tell you, oh, you don't need to work so hard. Like you would overstudy and overdo things. So it's really interesting. And this kind of comes to the parenting thing. So like your parenting style or how you are with someone who's a one needs to be different from someone who is not a one, because a one doesn't need and already puts so much pressure on yourself. You don't need any external pressure.
Right. That's true. I remember in elementary school when I got super stressed about my spelling tests every week, because, those can be stressful because you got to get 100% every week. And you were just so wondering why I was putting so much pressure on myself. And I remember you telling me, we will bake you a cake if you get a B on one of your tests. And I remember thinking, I would rather get the A than have the cake baked for me, because I just wanted everything to be perfect. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I know you had to wait a long time for that B.
Yeah, I did. But it came. Don't worry.
Eventually it comes to everybody. Eventually everybody gets one B. So anyway, so what are some of the insights that you've learned about kind of understanding how to relate to other people? Like how does it help you in relationships?
Well, I will say what we just said is, I don't go around like asking people, but it was helpful because my team last year started off talking about the Enneagram. I was aware of all of their numbers. And so it helped me empathize with the way that they were thinking and for them to understand me as well. But I think how it's helped me relate to other people, it's made me more aware of myself and how I can come off to others, even when I don't think I'm coming across as critical. Just knowing that my default mode is to be critical of the things around me is helpful, because I feel like I went through a very long phase where I came off as very critical to people in my family and even to other people. And I didn't ever mean to. It was just these high expectations that I had in my brain, and this idea of this is how the world's supposed to be, and this is what's right. These are good morals. And I had all these expectations, and I didn't realize I was placing them on other people. So I think just being aware of those and in the way I interact with people is helpful. And then also just being aware that this is like kind of the way my brain is wired, and that I need to actively work to give myself grace and to be aware of my thought patterns. Because when kind of what we talked about, how you can be in a state of health or stress, I can now kind of see when I'm starting to get some of the characteristics of a one in stress, and I can say something's wrong. And then I can also see when I'm in a state of health, because I start taking on those qualities. And so that's helpful.
That's one of my favorite things of the Enneagram is this whole thing of like what you look like when you're healthy, what you start doing or acting like when you're kind of average, and what is unhealthy. So this book, this Wisdom of the Enneagram, has like, it's divided into 9 different things for each number. Like there's 3 different healthy things. And I guess they're trying to say that like a level 1 is like the optimal, like at your greatest health when you're doing this. So this is the one, this is the description for you, a 1. The key term is accepting and wise. And it says, ones let go of the belief that they are in a position to judge anything objectively and are able to approach life without emotionally reacting to it. They also paradoxically achieve their basic desire to have integrity and to be good. As a result of their self-actualization, they become wise, discerning, accepting, hopeful, and often noble. Doesn't that sound good?
That does sound good.
Yeah, it's so good. So mine, I'm at my peak. Let's see what it says. I decided that right now, like if I had to like say what my main thing was, I was like the level 3, like I'm on the bottom of the healthy scale for mine, which is, I'll read you that. It's healthy, but it's level 3. So it's not, I haven't self-actualized to level 1, but it says goal oriented.
So success oriented.
Goal oriented.
Haven't gotten to level 1 yet.
Oh my gosh. I'm even using it in the, yes. So it says 3s reinforce their self-image by developing themselves and their talents. They are competent, confident, and persistent, becoming exemplary in whatever they do. Effective communicators, they are often popular role models and inspirations for others. Oh man. But then I have to say, just to go down to the I don't know. I just think part of one of the biggest things about mine that I've really come to understand is that for the type 3, where I am prone to not like resting in my feelings or emotions long enough or deep enough, I tend to just like, okay, I'm moving on. And that I think for me came out in the last few years with like all these problems in my body. Like, you know how the whole thing, your body keeps score, like my shoulder, my knee, always had some huge pain. And it was because I had like internal pain that I wasn't dealing with. Okay. So anyway, the Enneagram, anything else that you've kind of like insights that you've gained from it, or how you recommend, like if people want to sort of try to figure this out, what's the best way to start if you want to like check out the Enneagram?
Well, I have just been suggesting when people ask to just read The Road Back to You or read a really introductory level book, because the online quizzes, like I said, I got lots of different answers, and I think it's most helpful. You kind of just have to read descriptions more in depth and identify with one. I think that's more helpful than just taking a quiz and having something spit out an answer to you. Yeah.
And I actually had to read about all of them, because then it was like, because I would see parts, you know, of course you see like yourself in a lot of them. But I had to read through all of them to realize that, oh, this one really is the main one for me.
Right. And I think, I don't know enough about the Enneagram, but I know that there are like, we do take on parts of all the numbers, and there's some sort of pattern that sometimes people go through. Like you move around on the Enneagram a lot, sometimes to lots of different ones, depending on if you're in a state of stress or security. So it's not like your number is like you're locked in. It's like you move around a lot to your wings and then to other numbers too. So it's like normal to identify with a lot of different qualities, but I think it's when you really identify with one number, you found the right one.
Okay. So I have loved for years, like not just, I mean, this has been really fun, the Enneagram thing, because it's like your style, which another thing that we've talked about, and we actually went and listened to her speak, was Gretchen Rubin's The 4 Tendencies. So this was something that she developed, and it's just thinking about one thing, which is how you react to external and internal expectations. And it's another one that I think is helpful as a parent, because I think when you read that book, you can really know who you are, like what kind of, you know, which tendency you have, and why you will often have clashes with a child who is not like you. Because you think that, or like at work, it's the same thing. So there are 4 different tendencies. The first one is the upholder, and the upholder responds really positively to both external expectations and internal expectations. And you're very familiar with that one. It says, meets outer expectations, meets inner expectations. The obliger, which is what mine is meets outer expectations, resists inner expectations. The rebel resists both outer and inner expectations. And the questioner resists outer expectations, but meets inner expectations. And so like they have little quotes like, upholder is, discipline is my freedom. And obliger is, you can count on me, and I'm counting on you to count on me. The rebel is, you can't make me, and neither can I. And the questioner is, I'll comply if you convince me why. So I think about that, like, obviously, like we get along well because first of all, upholders, like I get along very well with upholders. You and my husband, your dad, are both upholders, and you're just the kind of people very dependable. Like whatever you say you're going to do, you do. And when you set a goal or say you're going to do something like run 5 miles a day, you actually do it.
For the most part, yes.
Which is really cool. But most people are obligers, which is what I am. And that's where I resist inner expectations. So I can do things, but I often need to put some kind of structure in place. And the best example I have of that is writing my book. I had always wanted to write a book, and I get all my work done for my job. If I have a deadline for something, I meet it. But I really needed to get help with that. So I hired a book coach, and she gave me deadlines. So I had these outer expectations for my book. And that's why I got it done. And so I think an upholder can just write a book without, any external expectations. But if you're an obliger, I think you really need to get some kind of structure, even just an accountability partner or something.
Right. I don't really remember all the specifics of the 4 tendencies, but don't you kind of lean toward one side also? So because I remember I was an upholder, but with obliger also
Yes. And I definitely lean more towards upholder than rebel for sure.
It's all personality tests. It's not every time I have an internal expectation or something, I meet it. And it's the same with you can have an internal expectation and meet it.
Nothing's all or nothing, but I will just say as a parent, I think it's really hard. If you have a rebel or questioner child, which, there's a lot of people who have that tendency, it's hard as a parent because when you're the parent, but they're going to resist your expectations. And so you really have to figure out some good strategies. And she shares some in here, rebels have to basically trick themselves into doing things since they resist all things. And questioners, you need to take the time to really make sure that they get their questions answered and understand why they're doing something. So a questioner kid with a parent, that as a parent, you can't just say, go do your homework or whatever. You have to take the time to make sure they really know, why do we need to know math or something? So anyway, there's so many of these personality tests. I feel like we've done so many of them. We've talked about, remember when you started at college, you did the Myers-Briggs too.
Right. That was we showed up freshman year and they said, everybody take Myers-Briggs. I will say though, I think some of these other ones are a little more in depth than Myers-Briggs. But yeah, there are a lot of personality tests out there.
Well, and I think it's fun to just take them because any little insights that you gain is just more self-awareness and just making you more aware. Oh, I have this tendency. Oh, I can do that. Oh, when I'm not healthy, this is what it looks like. Oh, this is when I'm doing well. So I love all these things, as do you.
Yes.
I know.
Our personality test.
Well, anyway, Meredith, this has been so much fun having you on. I appreciate you joining me. It was much more fun than trying to talk about this just by myself. That was not going to be very good. And you have made this so much fun. Any final thoughts on Enneagram or parenting kids with a different personality type than yourself?
I don't think so. Good luck, everybody. I also think you have to give yourself grace because it's not you can know what Enneagram types or what personality types all your kids have or family members have. I think especially when kids are changing and forming in different ways. And so it's not you can even really know what Enneagram number or what personality types they are until they're older. And so, but I think it's good to just be aware, but don't be too hard on yourself.
I know. And that's what, it is really true because there can just be certain personalities that maybe bring out not your great parts, as a person, your kid who has a personality that's so different from yours or that clashes with yours. That can be really hard as a parent, I think. And a lot of parents have a lot of pain over maybe they don't feel their relationship is really strong with one of their kids, but there's always reparation, especially if you take the time to learn a little bit more about each other and, take some time to figure it out. So anyway, well, thanks for being on, Meredith. Let's do it again sometime.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you so much for joining Meredith and me for this episode of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. As always, you can find notes, links, and more information about this episode on my website at sunshine-parenting.com. Just search for episode 104. If you enjoy the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, I would really appreciate it if you would take a moment to give the podcast a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like more resources and information, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com. Sign up for my weekly email where I share every week podcasts, events, book club, and resources, including favorites like my Ready for Adulthood checklist that's in the back of my book and also available on the Book Hub on my website. In my book, Happy Campers, I write about the importance of focusing on our kids' strengths. Here's what I say. It is remarkable to witness what happens when kids think and talk about a strength, often for the first time identifying it in themselves, and then learn how they can use that strength in different settings. When given a name to a part of themselves they recognize and intuitively know, kids gain a vocabulary to talk about themselves more positively.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.